it's Sam from Sugar Spun Run, and today we are making a strawberry shortcake cake. This cake is a simple, classic showstopper. You've probably had strawberry shortcake before, we've done it here before. It's great, don't get me wrong, but it's a very humble and basic dessert. Today we are elevating this dessert to literal new heights. We are making a gorgeous 3-layer strawberry shortcake cake. It has all of the flavors that you crave, surprisingly easy to make. Let's just get right to it. First things first, let's get your oven preheating to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Now let's talk about the cake. Traditionally, strawberry shortcakes are made with biscuits, which are a pretty plain base, which is fine. So I wanted a cake that was pretty neutral, sweet but not too sweet, and had just the right texture. My vanilla cake was it. That's what we're using today. If you've made that before, you're already familiar with this process, but let's go through it for those of you who aren't familiar. This recipe starts with a ½ cup of softened unsalted butter. Just going to give it a nice flavor. We can drop that in there. We're also going to use a ½ cup of oil. You want to use a neutral cooking oil. Canola and vegetable oil could be used, but I'm using avocado oil. It's been my preference recently. And this balance of butter and oil is going to give us a really nice buttery flavor, but since this cake should be refrigerated, the oil really helps keep it from drying out in the fridge. We're also going to add 1½ cups of granulated sugar. Now, an important step for giving this cake its perfect texture is creaming together the butter, the oil, and the sugar. You're going to want to at least use an electric hand mixer for this. You could use a stand mixer. This is going to work just fine for me today. Now, creaming together the butter and the sugar, this is a really important step. It's not just getting things nicely combined, we're also beating some air into it, which is going to give our cake a nice lighter texture. So I'll show you how this should look when it's thoroughly creamed, but it usually involves me mixing for about 1 minute, 2 minutes, sometimes even 3 minutes on about a medium speed. So this was a minute of mixing on medium-high speed, and you can see we've lightened in color some, and we've got a nice creamy mixture. So our next step is our eggs. We're going to be adding 4 large eggs. I do usually crack them in a separate bowl. All right, and we're going to add these eggs one at a time, and we're going to beat until combined after each addition. Oh, and I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but ideally your eggs should be at room temperature. Ideally, all of your ingredients should be at room temperature because that's just going to help everything combine nicely. Number 2. Number 3. And number 4. Now that last egg, I'm also going to add my vanilla extract. We're using a tablespoon of vanilla extract, which is going to give this cake a lovely vanilla flavor. Strawberry shortcake is meant to be a very, simple dessert, but we want each element to be as show-stopping and impressive as it can be without making it too indulgent or too over the top. Okay, we should be done with our mixer at this point. I'm gonna slide this bowl out of the way and grab a separate bowl for my dry ingredients, which is, as usual, too small, so I'm going to try not to spill anything, but we'll make it work. So here I have 3 cups of all-purpose flour. All-purpose flour is my preference for this recipe rather than cake flour, though you could substitute. We're also going to be using a tablespoon of baking powder and a ½ teaspoon of salt. We're just using a regular table salt today, and we'll whisk everything together until it's nicely combined. All right, let's bring back our butter mixture, butter, oil, etc. So we have our wet ingredients, we have our dry ingredients, and you are also going to need 1 1/4 cups of buttermilk. If you can't find buttermilk, I do have an easy substitute that you can use instead. However, buttermilk does give the cake more moisture and depth of flavor, so real buttermilk is my preference if you can find it. So we are going to alternate adding the buttermilk and the flour mixture to our wet ingredients, and we're always going to start and end with our dry ingredients. I usually add this in about 4 parts and this in about 3 parts. So just add about 1/4 of that. And if you recall, I said we are not using our electric mixer anymore at this point. Please do not use your electric mixer because if you do, you can overbeat the batter, and what will happen is your cake could end up being dense or dry or rubbery. So we are just going to use our spatula and we are gently folding in our flour mixture until it is mostly combined. Nobody wants a tense cake. And make sure you're scraping the sides and bottom of the bowl as you go. And once things are mostly combined, we'll add about 1/3 of our buttermilk. We'll stir that until that's mostly combined. Repeat with our flour mixture, our buttermilk, our flour mixture, our buttermilk, and our flour mixture. Last bit of buttermilk. All right, so when you are finished with your batter, it should look pretty uniform, but if you have some lumps in there, that's totally fine, don't panic. You can see mine's not completely smooth, but it does look pretty uniform and consistent in texture. I don't want to have any flour streaks remaining. This looks pretty good. All right, let's get to our oven. Today's recipe we are making in 3 8-inch cake pans for a 3-layer cake. So we'll just go ahead and evenly divide our cake batter into these pans. This smells so good and it's not even baking yet. Oh, and I wanted to mention about these pans, it is very important that you prep them before you add your cake batter. So you could use a baking spray. If you do, make sure it's a baking spray, not a cooking spray. It needs to have flour in it. What I've been doing these days is I've just been buttering the pan and dusting it with flour. Make sure you tap out your excess flour. And then this is so important. Make sure you are using a parchment paper round on the bottom of your cake pan because that is going to be your insurance that the cake does not stick. Prepped cake pans is so important for setting yourself up for success. The cake batter is a little bit thick, so you're going to want to use your spatula just to smooth it evenly into the pan, not leaving any batter behind. And then these cakes are off to our 350 Fahrenheit preheated oven. They're going to bake in the center rack for about 24 to 26 minutes. When they're finished, the cake should spring back if lightly touched. And I always like to use the toothpick test. A toothpick inserted in the center should come out clean or preferably with a few moist crumbs. So we'll let these cakes cool for about 10 to 15 minutes and then we're going to want to remove them from their cake pans. You don't want to do it sooner. You don't want them to fall apart. You don't want to wait too long. You don't want them to overbake. Even though we've prepped the pan, you still want to run a knife along the outside of the cake just to keep it from sticking. These are still a little bit hot, just be careful. And we will just carefully invert each cake onto a cooling rack, and it is going to need to cool completely before you can decorate it. See how it looks. See, when you use that parchment paper on the bottom, it comes out clean every time. Love it. So once our cakes are cooled, we can start preparing our filling and our frosting. Let's start with the strawberries. You'll need 2 pounds of fresh strawberries for this recipe. First thing we're going to do is set aside about a ½ pound. This is what's going to go on top of our cake for decoration. And the way I like to serve them is I like to cut them in half. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do that now. Cut these in half. Now for the rest of the strawberries, we're going to remove the tops, of course, and we're going to cut these into small bite-sized pieces. These are huge strawberries. So you can see I have some variation in size, but these are going to be easy to bite into, and also importantly, when you cut into your cake, you're not going to be also sawing through the strawberries. I'd say we're cutting the pieces to be like around 1/4 to 1/2 inch in size. All right, let's move these strawberries over to a separate bowl. And we're going to add 3 tablespoons of granulated sugar over top and stir everything together. We're going to let these strawberries sit while we prepare our frosting. So what we're doing here is we are macerating our strawberries. This is going to help draw out the juices, make the berries nice and sweet. You'll notice things will get pretty juicy as they're sitting. Set this aside and let's make our frosting. As you probably know, strawberry shortcake is traditionally made with whipped cream or a slightly sweetened or chantilly cream. We are going to be making a whipped cream frosting, but we are going to stabilize it. That way, if you're not eating the cake right away, you don't have to worry about the whipped cream weeping or things sliding off the cake. It's just a better frosting for the cake. So stabilized whipped cream frosting is stabilized using gelatin. I have 1½ teaspoons of gelatin here. Make sure you're using unflavored gelatin. And to this, we're going to add 2 tablespoons of water, and I do like to make sure mine's nice and cold. So I'm going to whisk this cold water into my gelatin, and I want to make sure that is fully absorbed. I don't want to see any lumps in my gelatin here. All right, once I'm satisfied with that, we'll just set our gelatin aside, out of the way, grab a large mixing bowl. If you're in a particularly humid climate, or if you ever struggle with whipping cream, you could use a large metal bowl instead and chill that in the freezer for 10 to 15 minutes before you begin. That can help you if you've ever run into any issues. So here we're going to combine 2 1/4 cups of heavy cream with 3/4 cup of powdered sugar and 1 1/2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. Now we're going to use our electric mixer to stir everything together until that sugar's absorbed. Then we'll turn our speed to high and we'll beat this until the mixture begins to thicken. We don't want to thicken it all the way yet. We don't want stiff peaks yet. We just want to notice that it's starting to thicken. Oh, and I'm using my regular beaters, but whisk attachments would probably work better here. So if you have those, you can use those. Okay, let's take a look at this, just so you know what I mean when I say it's thickened. So if you were to drag your finger through it, you would feel it's thickened some in consistency, offers a little resistance. We don't have soft peaks yet. You can see how it's clinging to the spatula. So we're going to stop here for now. All right, and let's grab our gelatin from earlier. This should have re-solidified at this point. You can see mine has. So now we're going to melt it. You're going to take it over to your microwave. Just heat it for 5 seconds, give it a nice stir with your whisk. If it hasn't completely reliquefied, put it back in the microwave for another 5 seconds. Make sure it's completely liquid before you go any further. So this is completely reliquefied. It's not too warm. Bring back your whipped cream. We're going to turn our mixer to low speed and we're going to gradually drizzle this in. Let me get that last bit in here. Now we'll gradually increase our speed to high and we're going to beat until we have stiff, fluffy peaks. Let's pause and take a look at this. Just going to grab another spatula. It should really resemble Cool Whip in appearance and consistency. I'm going to go just a little bit further. You don't want to go too further or it can start to break, but if you don't go far enough, it can be not quite as stable as you'd like and make the cake a little more prone to slipping. I think we're pretty good here. So I'm going to be piping this on the cake. I'm just going to go ahead and put this right in my piping bag. I have a large piping bag that I have fitted with the 848 piping tip, which is one of my favorites. I use it all the time. All right, cake assembly time. First thing I'm going to do is level my cakes. While this step is optional, so one of the best ways to get a nice looking cake that's not lopsided. Some people will just use a knife to level their cakes. I'm not very skilled with that. Mine always look worse for doing so. I just use this little cake leveler. It's very inexpensive. I will try to remember to link to it in the description in case you're interested in it. And these cake tops are great for snacking. All right, let's bring back those strawberries. Give them another quick stir. They should be looking super juicy and red right about now. Let's grab our frosting and let's decorate. So the first thing we're gonna do is we'll spread a thin layer of frosting over the cake. Then we will pipe a dam around the border of the cake. This is going to hold in our strawberries. And now we'll add half of our strawberries into the center of the cake. I am using a slotted spoon because I do want to drain off any excess juice. This will just help keep the cake from getting soggy. You won't get all of it off, that's fine. And if your strawberries end up a little higher than your dam, like mine did, I'm just gonna add a little bit more frosting. That way when I add my next layer, it's nice and level and not balancing on the strawberries. All right, now the rest of our strawberries. And remember, we're trying to drain off that excess juice. Now, once assembled, you are going to want to refrigerate this cake, and I do recommend enjoying it within 2, I'd say a maximum of 3 days. It's really best served the same day or within 24 hours of it being made. All right, now for frosting this cake, we're going to do a semi-naked frosting, which means we don't have to cover the whole cake. And I'll actually start doing this by just swiping any excess frosting around the outside of the cake. A little bit more, we'll just take it from the bag. I want a light coating of that whipped cream around the cake because it's going to help keep in the moisture, especially since we are going to be refrigerating this cake, but I actually really like some of the sponge of the cake to be shining through. The final thing I like to do is some nice, decorative, generous swirls of whipped cream on top. And I'm going to be putting my strawberry halves on top of these. So I do want to make sure that my swirls are centered on the cake and they're not hanging off the cake. Otherwise, when I try to add the strawberries, they're just going to fall off the cake. All right, before cutting into this cake, I do recommend covering it and refrigerating it for at least 15 to 30 minutes. That's just going to help things firm up a little bit. All right, we've waited about 30 minutes. Let's go ahead and cut into this cake. Of course, I have to remove some of the pretty strawberries we just put on. The first slice is always gonna look a little bit funny, so I cut my losses with that. And when I cut this cake, I do like to actually use a serrated knife, so I'm gonna switch to that and just sort of saw through, which helps us get a cleaner cut. And if you lose some of your strawberries in there, no worries, just go back for them. It may be a little messy, but it's so good. And that is how you make a strawberry shortcake cake. I really hope you guys enjoy this one as much as I do. It is the perfect springtime, summertime strawberry season cake. And if you try it, I would love to hear what you think. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Some extra whipped cream here. But it's so good. It is, it's a delicious cake. Oh my gosh. Today we are elevating that dirt, taking it. Hi kiddo, hold on just a second.
I tried the cake.
Hold on a minute.
That cake.
Hold on.
I tried the strawberry.
Sure, you can try the strawberry.